Zombie Apocalypse.
How's it going, everybody? This is Todd Drabo. Hope you're all having another great day, and welcome back to another video. So once again, I'm going to be doing another random thoughts video. In this series, I'll talk about whatever's on my mind, whether it's something interesting in the world, whether it's something in my life that I want to share with you, or if I just want to rant about something. And so for this one, I'm going to be talking a lot about sports, and particularly what's going on right now in the National Football League and its offseason. And this offseason could have the potential to become the craziest one we have ever seen. And there's already a lot that has been happening in the NFL. That being said, I'm going to be talking about some of the big things that have already happened this offseason when it comes to personnel changes, when it comes to the rosters, and why I think we have potential to see even more madness in the NFL within the next few months or so before the beginning of the 2021 NFL season, and why I think it's important for the future of the NFL in general. So as we know, usually around this time in the NFL, this is when it starts to pick up when it comes to being able to find the important players that could be free agents to join your teams on your roster for the upcoming season, whether it's making important deals or franchise tagging them, or even starting to sign guys entering the NFL through the NFL draft after a few years in college football. This is usually the time where there's usually some crazy things that are happening when it comes to free agent signings, but boy, this has been a really different offseason, and for a number of reasons. And there are already a few deals that have already been made this offseason that I think has really made this stand out as perhaps an offseason to remember so far, and one that I think is going to be defined as perhaps the craziest one that we have ever seen. So the first one that really tops this one is the trade deal between the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, as we all know, Matthew Stafford, he is the one that really set this thing up. He is the one that ended up being traded to the Los Angeles Rams for former number 1 overall pick Jared Goff. Now, obviously, both these teams were heading in different directions during this time. The Rams were doing very well. They were playing at Super Bowl 53 just a few years ago, and more importantly, they were on the rise. But the last couple of years since then, they've really struggled to be able to get back into the playoffs, although they didn't make it in last year. And then the Lions, unfortunately, they have been struggling ever since Matthew Stafford came. They made the playoffs a couple of times, but they've just never been able to find success. All of a sudden, the Lions decided that it was time to start making some moves, and they decided after they hired Dan Campbell that they were going to make this trade of Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams, and Goff will end up going to the Detroit Lions. Now, how this is going to play out when it comes to next season, I don't know, but there's a lot of potential for both these guys to do very well for their franchise. Jared Goff, I think it remains to be seen because, Detroit is a team that's really struggling, so we'll see exactly what happens with him. But Matthew Stafford, he's joining a pretty good Los Angeles Rams team, and I think he's got potential to do very well with them. The next big deal that I think is really important here in the NFL is the deal with Carson Wentz. Now, he was previously with the Philadelphia Eagles as the quarterback and was really expected to be the star quarterback for the franchise. However, unfortunately, things did not end very well with the Eagles. As we know, last season, the Eagles had drafted Jalen Hurts, and unfortunately, that seemed to really affect Carson Wentz. He unfortunately did not do very well, and as a result, near the end of the season, he was benched in favor of Jalen Hurts, and Hurts ended up getting the nod over Wentz, and now it looks like Hurts is going to be the new franchise quarterback for Philadelphia unless they decide something else is going to happen there. And so as a result, they decided that they were going to deal Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts after Philip Rivers had previously retired, and I think this is a team that can really help Carson Wentz get back on his feet. Last season, Carson Wentz was really struggling, and unfortunately, I really think that decision by the Eagles to draft Jalen Hurts really affected him negatively. But I think Indianapolis is a really good team that's really starting to turn it around offensively, and I think this is a team that Carson Wentz will have a chance to not only revive his career, but also lead the team back to the playoffs and potentially in the future make a run for the Super Bowl. The next big one is with J.J. Watt. Now, obviously, he was the superstar when he was with the Houston Texans. He won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards and was really an all-star there as a defensive end. But unfortunately, the Houston Texans have been pretty much a dumpster fire lately, and especially with their personnel and everything else that's been going on there. And JJ decided that, this is a team that he just couldn't play for anymore. And so he requested to be released, and that's exactly what happened. And now he is now going to be playing for the Arizona Cardinals, where he will be playing for the next 2 years. And this is a really interesting one, because I really think this is a team on the rise. They have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, and the team's definitely getting better. However, I'm really not so sure if Arizona's really there yet when it comes to a Super Bowl contending team, but it's really interesting to see JJ Watt decide to join that team. I thought he would more end up go to Pittsburgh because that's where his brothers TJ and Derek are. However, we'll see what he does in Arizona, and I think that he'll potentially do very well there, but we'll just have to see what happens. And then most recently, Alex Smith. He was the comeback player of the year last year after he nearly lost his leg after a horrific injury that he suffered in 2018. He only played in 6 games, but he led the team back to the playoffs, which unfortunately he didn't play in, and well, he had an amazing comeback year. But Washington, as we all know, they've been through a lot lately, and Alex Smith and the team decided that they wanted to take different directions. Just recently, Washington decided to release Alex Smith, and so where he ends up next, I really don't know, but this is a guy that really came back with a vengeance last season, and if he does end up at another team, and hopefully he does, I can tell you right now, they're going to be picking up a very sturdy veteran, because Alex Smith, I still believe he's got at least a few years left in him. Now, the big thing that I gotta talk about though is what could be next on the horizon, and there are still a lot of puzzles that still have to be answered. Like, for example, Shaun Watson. He's probably the most intriguing one of them all. As we all know, he wants out of Houston because he is very upset with all the things that have been happening there, but Houston has made it clear they are not going to trade him, and unfortunately, this has put Deshaun in a pickle, because you're facing the Texans franchise that wants to keep him, and he wants out of there, and I think it's very interesting to see exactly where it goes from there. It'll be interesting to see which team he decides to go for, and obviously if Houston does change their mind and decide to trade him, which team's going to give them that benefit of maybe handing them a first round pick or maybe a few star players, so that way they can get their hands on Deshaun. That'll be a very interesting thing to see in the near future. We'll also get a situation with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, he wants to stay with the Cowboys. However, they have been having a lot of issues there when it comes to negotiating his contract. And you know what? This is a familiar territory because, they suffered the same exact thing last year, and as a result, they had to franchise tag him and had to stay for at least 1 year. And unfortunately, we all saw what happened last year. He suffered that horrific injury, and I don't know if he's going to be able to play this season, but this is led to many speculation about what could happen with Dak Prescott. And you gotta count Russell Wilson as well, the Seattle Seahawks. He obviously wants to stay in Seattle, but if he has requested to be traded, Dallas could be one of those teams that he could join. And so obviously, if Cowboys do not get anything done with Dak Prescott and things go south from there, I'll be interested in seeing if the Cowboys decide to deal with the Seahawks to get Russell Wilson. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to see what happens. And of course, we can't count out guys like Aaron Rodgers. We don't know if he's going to stay in Green Bay after what happened. Last year was an incredible year for him. He won the MVP award, but he still has doubts about his future, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what he does. Drew Brees, we all know that, last season could have been his last season. He could potentially retire, but we just have to see, he could always change his mind. And there are a whole bunch of other stories, obviously, in the NFL that have to be solved, And of course, as you all know, I am a New York Jets fan. I don't know what the Jets are going to do with Sam Darnold. He has lost a little bit of his touch. However, I still believe he's a great quarterback, but right now, the way things are going, it looks like they might be having to draft Zach Wilson, and he's a good QB from BYU. We may have to draft him with the 2nd overall pick, but there are a lot of puzzles that still have to be answered when it comes to the NFL offseason, and I think that we still got a lot of time to be able to figure out where things go from there. So why am I thinking this as the craziest offseason in the NFL? Potentially ever? Well, mainly because of 3 reasons. Number 1, the NFL draft upcoming. And there are a lot of star talent in the NFL that could really make or break this upcoming season for multiple franchises. Now, obviously with Jacksonville, we all know what the fate's going to be up there. We know that they're going to get Trevor Lawrence, who could potentially be a once-in-a-generation quarterback. He's obviously going to go number 1 overall, but after that, the rest, it's really uncertain because, there are teams that have high draft picks, like the Jets, that may be looking at trading down though, or teams that may be trying to build up on their roster that could end up trading up, and there are a lot of guys that are coming out of college that can really help with turning these franchises that are struggling around. And this NFL draft roster is really stacked, and I think for those that are struggling, if they get their hands on any of those guys, it's going to be a huge help for them for this upcoming season. And I think this upcoming NFL draft could be one of the most intriguing ones that we have seen in quite some time. The second reason reason why I think this is interesting, because there is a possibility that there could be a lot of new faces at quarterbacks when it comes to this upcoming season on multiple franchises. There's a lot of speculation that there could be only 10 or 12 teams that could stick with their quarterbacks from last season. There could be a lot of franchises that have a lot of brand new quarterbacks for this upcoming season, and that is something that could be really unheard of. Like I said, we got old guys that are retiring, some guys that are going to try to push it a little further, like Tom Brady, of the now Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially playing till 50 years old, obviously, and you know what? The way he's been playing, I don't rule that out. That's definitely a possibility the way he has been playing. And there's also some guys, that are trying to turn around their careers, like I said, Alex Smith, Dak Prescott, Shaun Watson, and some new faces that we already know that are going to be in really different places. And also, like I said before, there are a lot of great guys that are coming in from the NFL draft that can really shake things up, like Lawrence, Zach Wilson, as well as guys like Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, and Justin Fields. Those are guys that can really shake up the NFL over the next few years. And the fact that we're potentially seeing an era where there are so many quarterbacks that may not be with their particular team this upcoming season, I really think this has potential, to make or break a lot of these franchises next season, because, this can cause a really massive shakeup when it comes to who could potentially be a contender for the playoffs next season, and potentially who could end up being on the fence or maybe end up missing out on the playoffs overall. Whether or not some of these teams that I've mentioned are able to make these deals with their quarterbacks or end up having to force a part ways with them, like I said, we will have to see, but obviously there are still a lot of unknowns when it comes to the future of multiple franchises quarterbacks, and obviously there are still a lot of questions to be unanswered, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when it comes to that aspect. Finally, I think the number one reason why this could be the craziest NFL offseason ever, and this is number 3 in my opinion. I remember making a video a couple years ago when I was talking about all of these things that are happening in the NBA when it comes to players trying to dictate where they want to go, trying to force teams to trade them to places that they want to go. I talked about a possibility that this may end up beginning to happen in other sports as well. If you want to know exactly what I mean by that, I'll leave the link in the description below so you can watch that video. That was all the way back in 2019 when things were really starting to get crazy when it comes to the NFL trade deadline that time. Well, now I think it's starting to begin to happen here in the NFL. I was pretty much foreshadowing the future when it comes to that, because now we're starting to see players that are trying to dictate where they want to go in their future. Like I said, Shaun Watson, he wants out of Houston. He wants to go somewhere else. Russell Wilson, he hasn't decided whether or not he wants to stay in Seattle or not. I mean, he wants to stay in Seattle, but if he wants to leave there, he's got 4 teams lined up. There's JJ Watt, he decided that he wanted out of Houston, and now he's with another team in Arizona. There are multiple players that are now starting to step up when it comes to trying to dictate where they want to take their NFL careers to. And because of that, this has really forced owners to really change up their strategies, because now you have players that really want to take control of their careers. And I really think that's important, that it's time for these owners to let these players go ahead and make their own decisions, because for a very long time these owners have really decided to make everything for their franchise. These are the ones that have made all decisions for the players when it comes to being able to sign them to exclusive deals or being able to make sponsorship deals for their franchises, and making sure that they're doing everything they can to be able to get all their fans in for every single week. But now we're starting to enter an era where players are deciding to take control of their own careers, and I really think it's time for these owners to realize that this is an era that's going to continue to evolve for a very long time, and as a result, these players are going to continue to make decisions that are really going to make or break each of these franchises in the long term. And I think in particular this is actually a good thing, and I say that because it generates a lot of uncertainty, and it generates a lot of excitement as well, because we really don't know what's going to happen next. Whether or not a player decides that they're going to stay with a franchise, or they're going to get all the way up to the top of ownership and tell them to trade them or request for their release, it's going to create a lot of excitement when it comes to generating a sweepstakes regarding, which team could end up getting that particular player, or which team could try to get an exclusive deal with that player and potentially keep them for the long term. It's now a competition when it comes to who can get the best players on their particular franchise, and this is only going to continue to evolve for a very long time within the next few years or so. And that's something that I think is really going to keep fans and NFL broadcasters on their toes. And it's a really exciting time in the NFL, because we're now now starting to see players, just like they're doing on the field and off the field, they're starting to take ownership for themselves. They are really trying to do whatever it takes to make sure that they get on the team that they want to be, so that way they can contend for a Super Bowl title. That's really caused a lot of excitement with a lot of franchises, fan bases, and it's really caused that battle to try to see who can get the best players, so that way they can be the team to beat for this upcoming season. And there's a lot of excitement as a result of that. I think this could have potential to have a very exciting 2021 season as a result. Because of that, I really think that right now we're on the cusp of potentially seeing the craziest offseason in NFL history, because there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of expectations that could really change the game of pro football for the next few years. And whether or not many of these things that I've mentioned today end up occurring or end up going the opposite direction, let me tell you something, it is a crazy time in the NFL. And let me tell you, if you're a fan, you are in this for the moment, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen next, but like I said, there are a lot of very exciting things that are coming right now in the NFL when it comes to these particular issues. Time will tell when it comes to what happens next, but let me tell you something, this is going to be a wild offseason, and for anything we've seen already the first few weeks has been any indication, let me tell you something, this offseason is going to be one very wild ride. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. As always, be sure to comment below on future suggestions for my videos, whether it's vlogs, projects, challenges, or random thoughts videos, you name it. Be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. And as always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for another video. Hope you all are having another great day. And as always, I hope to see all of you in another video very soon. So long, everybody.